Okay, so today is all about blogging by numbers. And with me today, we have 3 people who are more than qualified to talk about numbers. I mean, don't they look it? And I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with on my left.
Okay, hi. My name is James Nord. I run a company called Fohr. Is there anyone out here who's on Fohr? Raise it up. Yep. All right, that's good. I don't even have to introduce myself then. So you guys know who I am. So our platform helps brands work with influencers using data, analytics, technology, all that good stuff. I also get drunk once a week and answer influencers' questions on YouTube.
Right, and then
Yeah,
Mike?
my name's Mike Sorgenfrei. I sometimes get drunk more than once a week, but that's all right. I was the founder of a company called AdMass. Recently, we merged with a company called Tiger Media, which is really kind of forming the largest data organization around influencer marketing. So that's me. We're here in New York, headquartered down in LA. So if you're in either of those places, come by and say hi.
And the gentleman across me.
And I'm Tony, co-founder of Lumanu, based in San Francisco. So what we do, we focus on the moment that the content is actually published. Our whole goal is to make brands spend more and more money on influencers, because I don't think banners work anymore, and there's a lot of money that could be shifted. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So it's the start of 2018, and I think the number one question that a lot of us have is, what technology do you see that is going to be very relevant in influencer marketing that, and also would add value to campaigns going forward?
Sure. Yeah,
Mike?
that feels like a lob to me. So really right now, we focus on brands, agencies, and media companies, right? So our platform is leveraged by some of the biggest brands and agencies in the world. And for them, it's scale, right? 2017 was about testing the waters with influencers, and everybody here did an incredible job, and so they're really doubling down in 2018. We're seeing that in spend, and we're seeing that in scale of campaigns that they want to run, right? So I think that across the board, what is needed is a great way of understanding the value of who an influencer is. So a beautiful 4-card report is a great example of that. A great way of being able to find and sort through all the different influencers for whatever the objectives are that they're trying to hit, and then executing those campaigns, right? And on top of those campaigns, you need to really kind of boost and get more exposure and reporting. And so what 2018 is going to be all about is just scaling influencer marketing to be kind of the level that everybody here hopes it is.
Okay, so it's all about scaling.
Yeah.
And James, like, what data do you see your clients look for when it's about when it comes to influencer campaigns?
I mean, I think most clients are less advanced than we would like in the data that they're looking for. I think that there's still a lot of people who are just pretty happy to like work with an influencer and be like, this is really pretty, I like this, that's great. The more the more advanced, I guess the more money that comes in, the more people are going to want to get out of it, and that's kind of the like next step, I think, in the, with scale comes a responsibility to make sure that like this is really working and that like brands are getting value for what they're spending. So, certainly I think like trying to come up with and understand how and what ROI looks like in this space, because I don't know how much like direct ROI there's going to be in the influencer space. Like I personally, have never like gone and like, seen something and somebody posted and then like gone to a link in their profile, clicked on that link, and then like really quick, like let me just create an account on this like brand's webpage and let me put my credit card in and order this product. Like I don't do that. Some sociopaths out there might. So, it's hard to get like direct ROI on certain campaigns, and so we're gonna have to figure out.
On certain campaigns.
What's that?
On certain campaigns.
On certain campaigns. There's some stuff that just you sell the shit out of it, right? But on a lot of stuff, that's not how it works. So we, I think, have to figure out, how can we talk about ROI and value, and how can we make sure that when brands are spending, real serious money, if a big brand is putting $5 or $10 or $20 million a year into influencers, they need to understand that they're getting something out of that.
Okay, and this is a question that I'd like to ask each of you. What data do you see clients ask that you wish they wouldn't focus so much on, and what data you wish they actually would be more focused on? Let's start with Tony.
You know, one thing that for a while there, a lot of brands care about reach and impressions. But with Instagram, I think a lot of us here sort of deal a lot with Instagram because that's sort of the fun medium to do influencer marketing on right now. Impressions is a very hard number to quantify.
Yeah.
If you have 1 million followers, you don't actually get 1 million impressions, right? And that's something that I think now brands are becoming a lot more cognizant of. Because ultimately, content, no matter how beautiful, only works if someone actually sees it. So actually, this is a little bit of a segue to your last question, but for me, to really scale out influencer marketing, it's how do you actually get influencer content in front of more people? And you know, we're sort of at the mercy, right, of Instagram and Facebook. I think everyone's heard about the newsfeed algo changes. Publishers are getting less impressions. People on Instagram are seeing less impressions. But I think if we can just get past just impressions as a metric and try to understand, you know, what is the impact that creativity and images and videos are having on consumers, whether it's brand lift, ad recall, that would really help at least.
Okay. And Mike?
Yeah, so data is something that we do a lot of, and it's something that brands are becoming more and more kind of crazy about, to be completely honest. And it's the two phases of data during discovery and during reporting. And so on the discovery front, when they're looking for that quote-unquote perfect influencer, we're seeing that location data is becoming very, very, very important. As influencer marketing kind of expands, people are using it to, we work with like Rent the Runway, for example, and they do new store launches all the time, and they're looking for influencers in those specific geolocations. So put your location in your bio. So that's probably on the profile discovery piece, one of the most important parts. On reporting, you know, it's a tricky thing. Everybody has a different level of requirements on reporting, whether it's actual purchases, whether it's impressions. Just by show of hands, has anybody ever sent like Instagram story analytics to a brand that they've worked with before? Yeah. So that's so critically important. And getting this first party data, so working with the brand through a platform like ours or another platform that's able to really show you those first-party analytics is becoming more and more important to the brand because they want to see not just, okay, I understand how many followers that person has, but what was their actual impression goal, what were the actual swipe ups, what were the actual things that happened, and then bringing all that data together in one place.
Okay. James?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's you know, at first it was just followers and engagement, right? And like, what's frustrating for brands is that the foundational economics of the entire industry are based on followers and engagement, both of which are really easy to buy. And so as a brand, you're coming into the space with a lot of, you know, a bit of fear and unknowing of like, am I actually buying something real or am I not buying something real? So selfishly, I'd like to hope that, you know, that is a story that comes up more and more. The whole fake followers thing is really frustrating personally, just because it's fraud, right? You're stealing from brands. If you're buying followers and then charging extra money based on that follower count, then you are actually stealing. I know this because part of the way we wanted to like market our fake follower tool, a follower health tool, is to create a fake influencer, buy followers, and work with a brand. And our lawyers were just like, that is illegal. You can't do that. You can't. I was like, fucking lawyers, always killing my vibe. So, you know, I think authenticity and transparency are going to be something that's going to be a bigger part of the conversation. I know at Forecard, something we're looking at is like what percentage of your feed is sponsored, you know, and at what level does your feed cease to...
Is that a feature that's already on Forecard, or is it coming up soon?
It's coming up soon, but it's something now we're just kind of manually doing as we're kind of building it out. But like, is 50% too much? I would say yes. You know, I mean, I personally, if I follow an influencer and half their shit's sponsored, I'm just gonna be like, peace. Like, I just don't believe anything you say anymore.
I don't know. I feel like, hey, you know, you want to show me the money.
I mean, get the money, but at some point, like, you might get so much money that people are just like not into it anymore.
That's
you know,
true.
and they just say like, I don't believe you anymore. And if they don't believe you, then you can't influence them. If you can't influence them, you can't provide value. If you can't provide value, then people won't work with you.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that because we actually saw a use case just recently where the brand wanted to identify influencers that have never posted a single sponsored content piece before. Obviously, that doesn't help you guys if you've done sponsored content, but what obviously does help, and please don't roll your eyes too hard when you hear this, is authenticity, right? So working with some incredible companies that we work with, one of them being Socialite, we do a lot of things around like media value. So there's so much more than just impressions. It's also, what is that photo worth, right? What is the actual engagement and like on the real impressions that you're getting? So if you're going out there and doing it, it's really important to keep with that authenticity, because really smart brand advertisers understand that there's more value than just your followers or just your engagements.
I want to add on to that as well, because
Okay.
there is something really interesting between authenticity and professional creative. And we actually ran an experiment a while back where, you think a bunch of college kids who aren't paid anything, right, taking pictures with products they really like is going to have a huge impact. Compare that to someone who is a very good influencer who gets paid a lot of money, but the product, right, the results of the imagery, the videos are just very good. Authenticity is very important. It's not always the case that it's the best, especially today where, as we get into a world where you have to pay to get your content out there, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, a lot of times really high quality content matters a lot. One of the very easy experiments, one of our brands actually ran a test during the Super Bowl where they took boomerang stories from influencers and they ran just a normal test to people that don't know who the influencers are. And then they check out their relevance score on Facebook. If you guys don't know ad tech, it's very clear, right? There's some content that Facebook says, this is way cheaper. $1 will get this content out to 1,000 people, whereas another influencer's content, it might cost $10 to get that content out. So if you want to have a brand pay you, I think going forward is a delicate mix between authenticity, but also, sometimes you want to work with that influencer who has experience doing sponsor posts, who has experience working with brands, and who has experience creating, picture perfect images or videos.
Okay. And I think that brings me to the next question is, are influencer platforms like part of the social media listening tool, or is it separate? Like, what are the difference between the two? Who'd like to start?
Difference between social, like influencer marketing platforms and social listening tools?
Social media listening tools and influencer marketing platform. Is that the same, or is it a subset? Like, what are the differences?
I mean, I guess, broadly, social listening is everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just consumers, it's your mom, it's everyone, and influencer platforms are a bit more focused. So, if you were to go to a social listening tool and type in Chanel, you would get everything, right? But if you're Chanel and you just want to see what are influencers talking about,
Right.
what's this more kind of targeted group that is kind of, at the forefront of consumer trends and culture, what are they saying? Then the influencer platform kind of can help do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that because we are just a software as a service, right? So we don't do any managed services, and so we get plugged into that tech stack a lot, right? So we want a social listening tool that's just looking across all of our brands. We want an influencer marketing platform that does discovery. We want a tool that helps us buy media and boost the media that we have, right? And so we have to sit very nicely within those that entire ecosystem. And what's great about that is that brands are getting smarter when you kind of partner influencer marketing tools with social listening tools, because they're looking for influencers that are already talking about them, right? They kind of feel that's organic or earned. I'm sure everybody here has done that trick where they've just tagged like 1,200 brands in the bottom right corner that they want to work with.
Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Stop
Please don't do that.
Oh, God, stop doing that. If I have to hide another goddamn influencer photo from my feed because you're tagging our shit, I am just going to lose it.
So when you do that in kind of a more authentic way where it's not every brand you can think of, but it's actually the great purse that you love and you're actually wearing out, or the shoes or whatever it might be, brands are seeing that, right? And they're folding that into their social listening tools that's pulling that information, and then they're kicking it back to our discovery profiles so that they can contact you and then start to work with you. So things are becoming really, really advanced with that scale and reporting and everything like that, and so you have to really kind of play across that entire ecosystem.
Okay. Tony, do you have something to say?
I would say most of it, these guys hit on perfectly. One thing that I would add is if you're a brand, put yourself in the shoes of like Urban Outfitters, right? And your boss said, hey, here's $100,000 to promote, Valentine's Day. Influencer marketing platforms and products and companies like Socialite teams, they will help you spend that money. Social monitoring tools are one of a suite of products where they determine if you get $200,000 next year or $50,000, right? So if you do well and you can actually prove it to your boss, social media listening is one of them. Because if you're an influencer and you get a bunch of people talking, even normal people that aren't influencers, social media listening tools would pick that up.
Okay.
Cool.
My next question is, do you think bloggers or blogs are still relevant? This is my personal question, but from your experience, do you think bloggers or blogs are still relevant when social media, most people would just don't go there anymore? Me personally, like the bloggers that I follow, I just follow them on Instagram now. So is that still relevant from the data that you've seen?
100%. I think it's actually becoming more and more and more relevant. People are wanting more long-form, authentic, deeper content. Instagram should obviously still be used as a tool to drive traffic to that blog, but blogs are actually becoming more and more asked about. It's tricky because as an influencer, you need to be a little bit more tech savvy, right? You need to have Google Analytics set up, or you need to have some kind of reporting set up, because just because it's a blog doesn't mean that brands are not going to ask you about your metrics and your reporting. So it's still challenging, but incredibly relevant, if not becoming more relevant.
Okay.
I would definitely agree. We actually had a very interesting data point recently where if you think about a consumer, right, on the path to trying to figure out what they want to buy, there's several states that they go through, from learning about a brand for the first time, considering buying it, maybe doing some research, and then finally buying it. And different channels from Instagram to Facebook to blogs help at different parts of that journey. We had a brand who got a ton of people to visit their website, like millions per month, but they just couldn't get them over the finish line. In that case, Instagram content might not actually be that helpful, but they paid a ton of money for blogs, and they actually found one particular blog article that did an amazing job of moving people from consideration to purchase, to the point where every single month they poured in $50,000 to $100,000 driving traffic to that one article over and over again. Because they could prove, right, with analytics that every 100 person that visit this article, 5 purchased, which is also cool for the blogger because she made bank off of the AdSense in that article. So these are some of the things that are happening now that weren't possible before with things like branded content boosting. If you can just show the impact, there's an opportunity to really make money more than just making the content in the first place. But definitely, I think blogs have a place. Just depends on the brand you're working with and the goal of the campaign.
Yeah.
I like to fight, so I'm gonna say, I wish they were gonna continue to be relevant. If blogs were like a thing in 5 years, I'd be shocked.
Why do you say that?
I just don't know that like desktop internet is gonna be that much of a thing in 5 years, and like the idea of typing in a website exhausts me. Like.
Okay.
You gotta
gotta type it in. Like, I mean, yeah, like we look at the data and like people still have blogs and blog traffic is like slowly growing, but like, honestly, the motivation isn't there because like there's just not that much money in it anymore. And if there's not much money in it, then like there's not a lot of people focusing on it. And so the less people that focus on it, the less it's being talked about, and like it slowly kind of fall out of the lexicon. And like, I remember seeing this thing. Thank God for Time Hop. Pulled up a tweet of mine from like 7 years ago the other day, and it said that like, 10% of the internet users in the world are over the age of 60, and they account for 50% of ad effectiveness, banner ad effectiveness, because old people don't understand the internet and they click on banner ads. Okay, so like, I just don't see blogs surviving, like the app and the phone. I think that there could be a place for long-form content, certainly, but I don't think that it will be in a like dispersed blog world that like lives out there. Maybe I'll be wrong.
Well, do you find your clients asking for more social media campaigns versus, sponsored blog posts?
People almost never ask for blog posts.
Okay. Is that true for Mike and Tony?
No, not at all. I mean, Amazon generates tons and tons of revenue from affiliate programs, right? And the affiliate programs are driven through blogs.
So I guess it's maybe you have different clients.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to influence people, right? And there's a lot of different. I think the point that one valuable point there is that blogs are more fractured. I
Yeah.
have to go to a blog versus just going to Instagram. But again, that's why I say Instagram should be used as a tool to drive you to your blog, because I think there's great points also made about the conversions that happen on blogs.
Okay. So if I were an influencer or blogger, which I am, what kind of numbers do I have to pay attention to if I wanted to care about my metrics? Like, let's start with Tony.
So it depends on the channels you're effective on. Let's pick Instagram to begin with. One of the most important metrics in my mind is the actual impressions that your content's driving, especially as a ratio of the number of followers. Unfortunately, you can only get that if you have a business account, but if you do, there are certain metrics where if you see that less than 10% of your followers are actually seeing your posts or actually seeing your videos, you got to figure out how to fix that. Because what that means is when a brand pays for you, they're basically going to do the mental math and say, I'm actually only getting 10% of your audience to see this. And then from there, one of the most important thing, in fact, one thing that I really push people to do more of now is it's just like a job interview where you need references, right? A lot of times now, people are a little bit hesitant to work with someone that's never had any experience with a brand before. Whether that's positive case studies that you've done in the past, not just, hey, look at this image, but anything that you can get the brand to give back to you about the effectiveness of what you did, whether it's website traffic you drove. There's actually new metrics coming out in 2018 called impact scores, where you can actually figure out, for instance, even if someone doesn't click on your posts, did they actually end up buying or visiting the client's website? Those metrics, just ask your brand, hey, can I get some example case studies or any type of data about how good I was, and then use that in your future negotiations, which will help you get paid more and hopefully get activated.
So ask the brand for feedback and numbers.
Ask the brand for feedback and metrics,
Yeah.
because they will have metrics that you won't be able to get.
Okay,
On your own.
that's really helpful. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think he covered it. A number one absolute thing that you have to do is have a business account, right? Have a business account on Instagram. If you don't have one, I won't be offended if you pull out your phone now and do that. Do that, and then enable whoever you're working with to get that first-party data, right? So that means that you'll have to connect your Instagram account to whatever they're asking you to. Obviously, Google it, make sure it's real. It's not just anything random out there. If it says Tiger Media, you're completely fine. But that gives actual true impressions, that gives clicks, that gives swipes ups, that gives everything that they absolutely care about. A bizarre one that we see a lot that people care about is, that's already been touched on, is ratio of sponsored content to non-sponsored content. But besides that, it's...
What is alarming? What is like an alarming ratio? 80%, 50%?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely 80%. definitely 80%. 50% is alarming as well, right?
Okay.
I'll say the one exception there is if it's just with a single brand,
Okay.
right? So like Iskra does an incredible job of this through one of our partners, American Eagle and Aerie. That's who she works with, right? And you tie those people together. And then a lot of her posts are sponsored because she has that partnership with them. And even when they're not quote unquote sponsored, they're still promoting her brand, but that's the value of a long-term relationship. So I would say if it's with one or two brands, it can be a little bit higher, but keep it down, but still get paid.
What's a good ratio to you?
I mean, so every brand is going to optimize, right? Like I said, one brand asked us to find somebody that have never done a sponsored post before, but I think 1 in 4, I think that there's a lot smarter people.
25%.
Yeah, probably.
Around there.
There's smarter people like Becca. You should find her and ask her this question. But I'd say keep it low.
James, you feel like, I feel like your face is not agreeing.
I was blacked out. Where am I? I think there's like, thinking about what influencers should focus on, metrics-wise. I guess there's two things. It's like your ability to sell yourself, you should focus on the metrics that make you look really good. I mean, honestly. So like you need to figure out how to tell your story and convince a brand and let them know why you are worth the money that you are charging, and for every influencer, that's going to be different.
Right.
Because and for every brand, your pitch and the way you bring value may be different. I think so. Like having a base understanding of, I think the some of the stuff that y'all are talking about and what brands care about is important. There's a general lack of, I think that, well, how do I want to say it? The brands and influencers sometimes like speak a different language. Like they have this like corporate vernacular and like terms that like most influencers don't understand,
right.
Which is not like I don't understand them. But I think it stops you from being able to like speak that brand's language and be able to tell them why in their language you make sense to work with. So there's that. I think like what you should focus on, and I think Beck and I were just talking about this in the back, is that like, I think that there's too much, like I love that you guys are here and we're like, okay, how can we make more money? How can we get better? But it's too much about like, what can I take out of the world and not enough of like, what can I put into it? Like if you are like providing value and if you're doing something different and interesting and you care about that, like the numbers generally follow, like there are people growing really, really fast on Instagram and YouTube right now. Those people are doing something that people are connecting with that they find interesting, and like the money will just follow. Like if you kind of touch on that thing, everything else just kind of like works out. And then you can like optimize and like be like, how can I make 10% or 20% more next year? Or how can I be a little better at this, a little better at that? But if you're sitting at 10K and you're stressing about numbers and analytics and data, I think that you're probably stressing about the wrong thing.
Okay, so bonus round question. If a client has $100,000, what is the ideal way to allocate that to a campaign?
Fohr card.
I was expecting that. Okay, let's start with you, James. I have $100,000. I have this, shoe line. What should I do?
I think it depends, is it a brand that's launching a new product? Is it something that is, been around forever and you just want people to remember it?
So let's say, what would be the difference? If a new brand with $100,000 versus an established brand with $100,000, what would be like the difference in those two campaigns?
Well, there are influencers that are good at driving action, and then there are influencers that are good brand advocates, and if we want to like get into the weeds of like the way marketing dorks talk about this stuff is like, top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel marketing. So like Facebook is bottom of the funnel marketing. It's stuff you've already heard of, you've already seen, you've probably already been to the website, and all they're trying to do is get you to like, they're going to show you it 10 times a day until you finally click on it and buy it, right? And then top of the funnel is like all the beautiful, cool like TV ads you see, or the like brand awareness campaigns that are run with influencers, where they don't really care about sales. Because if you're a totally new product, let's say you have you're a new moisturizer, you're $75, right? You've never heard of it, it's a week old, and an influencer posts about it and says like, go buy this. There's almost no chance, like you're just not gonna do that. And like, you need to, the point of advertising foundationally is not to sell products, is to create repeat impressions so that when you do go to buy a new moisturizer, if you've seen 10 people post about this new thing, you might say, oh, I'm gonna at least consider buying that. And so for us, if it's a new product that we need to like do a kind of brand awareness,
multiple impressions.
Yeah, then like
time.
we work on it with this thing. If it's a brand everyone's heard of, if it's a brand that's like a luxury brand, they're like, we just need to be seen with the coolest it girls that are out there right now. That like, every campaign is a bit different, which is like, we talk about it as like art and science. Like there's a science side to influencer marketing, and then there's an art side to it that like you can't separate. You can't just look at the data,
right?
Because
I agree.
These are brands that have stories and they have people that run them, and like some of those people, like all the data could be saying like, work with this influencer, and the head of PR could be like, well, I don't like that person, so we're not working with them. And so like that's the human side of it that you can't change.
Okay.
Yeah,
$100,000.
Yeah, just real simply, I would spend 60 grand on Instagram, 20 grand on blogs, 20 grand boosting Instagram. The reason for that
I guess the question is, if let's say I'm a brand with 100K, how would you allocate that? What is the thought process that would allocate that money?
Yeah, so I would do 60 grand on Instagram because I would want to work with a bunch of influencers, right? And I would want to work with high quality influencers with high engagement that produces multiple pieces of content that's really nice, right? And so that's going to be a little bit more expensive. And so 60 grand would be allocated to that. 20 grand would be allocated to blogs because with that many influencers posting, you're going to create some buzz and some awareness. And so the blog will help you optimize your SEO, your search results. And so you'll get a longer form report about why that product or shoe or whatever we were selling is great and they should buy it. And then you spend 20 grand boosting because you can reach X amount of impressions and X amount of followers, but I want to reach more. And so as a business account, which hopefully everybody is now signed up for, you can go in there and boost additional reach on top of that.
I like that you say boost. Do you find that it's necessary or crucial in today's, algorithm-based market to boost posts on Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, so very specifically, I'm talking about a brand coming in and boosting an influencer's piece of content, not the influencer themselves boosting the content. Procter & Gamble will prefer to work with a smaller influencer so that they can pay more money on boosting the content. So yeah, it's becoming very, very important.
Okay.
I really like what James said. You can't separate the art from the science. So way to go, man. So I'm a science guy, but I can sort of pretend to be artsy for a moment. If I had 100,000, the first thing I would say is, how do I get the most artistic piece of content, whether it's image, video, blogs, or some combination thereof, that helps me achieve my goal, whether it's launching a new product or driving sales or highlighting a grand opening, right? How much of that 100,000 I allocate, it doesn't really matter. It could be half. Let's stick with half for now. But the trick is, in this world, though, the nice thing about influencer marketing versus like the days of Mad Men, right? You pay an ad agency on Madison Ave back in the day, you get one shot, and that's it. Today, you can work with 5, 10, 20 influencers, whatever your budget dictates, and get a host of content. And you can have the sort of the arts lens, right? Look at it, see which one really speaks about your brand, or you can use some type of metric or some combination to figure out which piece of content you like the best. The other half of my budget, I would then do boosting, but a little bit more than just boosting, because if you think about the world today, it's you got content, and then you got to get the content out in front of the right people. We also have seen people where you work with small influencers, and then you pay a bunch of money to boost their content. One little downside to that is the moment that you separate the influencer's content from the audience that actually recognizes and knows the influencer, right? You sort of get into this middle ground where the influencer is sort of like a glorified photographer or graphics designer. Because, who's this person, right, that just popped on the billboard if you don't know who they are? It still works a lot better than generic stock images for sure, so there's definitely a lot of value. But yeah, to answer your question, first, 50% of my budget, I would figure out what influencers I want to work with, get a decent amount of content. The other 50%, I would do a very intelligent smart boost or boosting where you would figure out, do I want to drive traffic to my store? Do I want to drive brand awareness? That would dictate where you put the content, whether it's Instagram ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, billboard ads. And you just try to get that imagery out there and try to target it in a way where you're actually putting it in front of people that actually know who the influencers are, or at least very similar to the type of people that would respond very well to that image. While you have a millennial female influencer talking about Chanel, you probably don't want to amplify that to the Midwest somewhere, right? You might want to do it in urban cities. So things like that, I think, are definitely going to be a lot more common in 2018 and beyond as we think about how to get influencer content in front of the right people.
Wonderful. And that wraps up our questions with the panelists. I'd like to open the floor to questions. Yes, we have quite a few.
Hi, I actually work on the brand side, and we are working with influencers. And as you guys said, 2017 was the year where we dipped our toes in, and really 2018, we're leaning in really heavy on it. James, you talked about ROI and how much of a challenge it is. Attribution's definitely a challenge for us. Tony, you mentioned impact ratio. That's a new metric I've never heard of. So the question I have for you all is, what creative ways are there for attribution outside of direct links that you're recommending to brands?
Just use Lumanu. I'm going to use one of those lines. So you could use us, for instance. But yeah, to answer a little bit more seriously. So to go into a bit more detail about the impact score, imagine a world where influencer marketing doesn't exist, right? And you're a brand and you want to produce content. You're probably going to host it on your own Instagram page, your own YouTube, or your own blog. There's actually methodology to measuring how much a particular page on your website is actually impacting your bottom line or your brand lift. The trick is, the moment that you're paying an influencer and they're publishing on their blog or their Instagram or their YouTube, you no longer have access to first-party data, which I think we've mentioned a few times. I really believe that in order for influencer marketing to keep growing and to dominate and grab the budgets from banner ads and all these other things that just don't work anymore, you have to allow brands to have access to the same data with influencers that they can had they just publish content on their own channels. And it's not about taking that data and then selling it. It's literally to justify to their bosses, this works, you should double my budget next year and take it from my banner ad colleague, right? And I use this example a lot because these are actually the conversations that are going on. Because in the banner ad world, if your budget goes from $1 million to $2 million, it just takes an extra push of a button. Influencer marketing is a lot harder to scale just by the nature of how much human interaction there is. But the impact score, if you're familiar with any ad guys or anyone, and maybe it's a different part, it's usually not the social media team or social marketing team within a brand, but they'll know methods to use pixel data, audience overlaps. There's actually a lot of very advanced techniques to say things like, I know someone doesn't just look at an Instagram post and all of a sudden go and buy something, right? Like that just doesn't happen unless you're a psychopath. But there is a very easy
I've done that. I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
I'm psychopath.
it
I
happens
think I actually
sometimes.
bought these shoes
Yeah.
from an Instagram post.
But the metric that I love to use is, looking at the 30 days from the first piece of content getting posted for this campaign, 30 days afterwards, looking at all of the website traffic that I get, all the brand mentions, how many of those were impacted by anyone that followed my influencers. That number you can actually come up with if you actually have a partnership with the influencers at the level where you get access to their first-party data.
Bless you.
And you can do that while working with multiple.
Yeah, you can. It's tough. It's hard. But Facebook actually does it if you spend enough money. Our goal as Lumanu is basically provide that capability to brands with slightly smaller budgets and the technology to enable it. That's why I said at the beginning, we usually don't do anything with identifying influencers, activating influencers, because we believe companies like Socialite and Fohr do an amazing job of that. We only come in after the content gets published, and our whole goal is to help justify it to the brand marketer so that they can get more budget from their bosses, for future campaigns.
Great answer, Tony. Other questions? Yes?
Hi. Okay, so from the other side, from the blogging side, I just did a post for a client that didn't know all about this paid partnership and how much to charge and how to do the Instagram and do they have access to my pictures, and we had this whole negotiation, without using anything else but just discussion on email, and we were trying to figure out how to do the paid partnership on the top of the Instagram that says it was paid from this client, and we didn't know how to figure that out. That was one, and then how do they actually boost the post days, weeks, hours later for them to be able to use it to their advantage so that they can get positive feedback from it?
I don't understand your question. Are you asking how they could boost
How can
your
they boost?
posts?
Yes.
I'll jump in there. That's something I talked a lot about. I'll talk to you after, but Facebook has an entire tutorial about switching over to a business account and then enabling brands to come in and boost. So Facebook makes that very easy because you're paying them money.
I believe only Facebook has that capability,
It's on
correct?
Instagram now, too.
Oh, Instagram as well?
It's
Okay.
called the branded content tool. So if you have a business account and you publish a post, there's a little option in your Instagram app, for instance, that you can say,
Boost app.
Boost, but also before you can boost, you have to say in partnership with.
Yeah.
And then the brand has to approve. And then once that happens, you'll see that little, in paid partnership with Nike.
Okay, maybe you'll show me later.
Yeah.
Hi. I work on the influencer agency side for an agency called Collectively. I'm interested in Tony. Hi, how are you? I'm interested in anyone's thoughts on how the future of data and the growing transparency around impressions versus reach, bot scores, activity scores, how that's going to potentially affect rates across the industry.
I think I could have an entire panel about that. I mean, I think that's an incredible question. I think the New York Times article is already bringing to light a lot of the things that people were scared about. I think some YouTube stars are making life pretty hard for other people as well. And I think that will drive down prices generically, but again, as everybody said, in kind of a different way. Authenticity will still be king, great quality content will still be king, the right kind of partnerships will still be king, the right kind of representation will still be king. But if you're just starting out and you're kind of blowing up your numbers, I think it's going to be pretty hard.
I think data transparency would make the pricing more fair because you're actually paying for what you're going to get. And also it will help the smaller, influencers with more impact and more influence?
I would think that influencers would be deluding themselves if they think that prices are going to go up. There's no industry in the world in which, as supply skyrockets, prices go along with it.
Yeah.
So I think that you will, I mean, there's 800 million Instagram accounts. There was 200 million a couple years ago, so there's a lot more people to choose from. And brands will, I mean, the prices will just keep going down.
So you're saying that prices or fees have plateaued or stabilized?
I think eventually they'll go down. I mean, this is the way industries work. Like, media doesn't become more valuable as it becomes, like as the industry grows up. It's like, ooh, this is a really hot, cool thing. Mm-hmm. This is the same on the agency side, right? Like with margins, like that stuff that's on a downward trajectory all the time in every industry as it matures. And like, are influencers providing the value? Like, is the flat lay that you spent 10 seconds on and you got paid $3,000 for? Like,
it's not 10 seconds.
Is that providing value?
I spent 3 hours on my flat lays.
Yeah, I mean, is the value there? Like, I honestly, I mean, this is my whole life and I can't answer that question, So, I mean.
So, I might have a hot take about this one. So I think in terms of compensation per post, it's probably not going to go up. It might go down for some influencers who, maybe not through any fault of their own, their metrics maybe just didn't end up in a way where a lot of brands are looking. Mm-hmm. But I think the space as a whole is going to get a lot more money. And I think the reason why is in a lot of space, right, as supply goes up, you're not going to get more money unless demand also goes up. So, for instance, I just had a conversation with the head of beauty at Macy's, and about, I would say 5-6 years ago, literally every single penny that used to go into banner ads are now being reallocated. And the options are TV ads, influencer marketing, or social ads. And you can imagine that used to be a lot of money, right? And even if there are more influencers, there's just more money to go around. The trick is, how do you actually justify your piece of that pie? And I'm a little bit with James here. Like, if you're the type that just takes selfies with, nice clothes or whatever, you're probably not going to get much more of the pie. But if you have the capability of working a little bit deeper with the brands, whether it's, hey, I'm going to give you 10 pieces of content. Maybe I'll only post 1 on my Instagram feed. But out of these 9, I really think it's going to be better than, say, an ad agency giving you those 9. Or, hey, instead of just doing an image, I'm going to create a video. Ipsy built an empire off of having a studio that they actually brought influencers in, rather than hiring professional creative agencies. So I definitely think there's value. You just have to find your value in that space. If you're a videographer, one thing I would recommend is every influencer should learn how to make very good videos. Yeah. Even short-form boomerang videos are very, very effective. And also images that pop a little bit. But I think the pie is getting bigger. It's not going to be the case that everyone's going to have equal portions of the bigger pie. So you sort of have to make your own world, right? Just like any industry.
Don't disparage selfies. Selfies sell. I mean, you just ask the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Selfies have their place. They move a lot of product.
Okay, I'm gonna practice my selfie skills after this.
Funny story about that, actually. So boomerangs also sell. There was a beverage company 2 years ago that had a couple boomerangs from Instagram. I think they poured like millions of dollars just promoting boomerang videos because it's authentic, it's super cheap. It doesn't have the same like superficial feeling of like a professional 20-second ad. So selfie sells, boomerang sells. Honestly, a lot of things you do on Instagram really sells.
Got it. Any other questions?
I'll talk loud. How's that? So I'm a blogger who writes long content, and I really am interested in this idea of brands using that content, but helping to drive traffic to my blog, because what I'm lacking in is the traffic. I'm kind of in that middle ground right now where I'm not big enough to be able to work with brands. How do brands notice you if you're writing content about them that's just authentic and there's no partnership? How do you get on their radar?
I mean, you were an influencer. Do you want to answer that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I had my time on the internet. That's true.
Didn't sell anything.
There's a lot of ways. I mean, You know, I mean, we talked about social listening tools. Like, they are watching this stuff, and certainly, like, they have very advanced tools that help them know, like, where are they getting sales from. So they start seeing a bunch of sales coming from this blog post, they might reach out. But brands are, you know, people that work at these brands are generally massively busy, and the people that make the decisions on what influencers you work with are not the people sitting geeking out about numbers generally. There's like the people that have to justify the spend are different than the people generally that are spending it. So I think you would probably still have to reach out, email the brand and be like, hi, I wrote this post, you know, I'd love to work with you, et cetera, because they're probably, the chances of them actually like finding that and reaching out to you are probably pretty slim, I'd say.
You need to get a Fohr card page.
Get a Fohr
Yeah,
card page.
get on Fohr
Wouldn't kill
card.
you. Yeah, you can sign up for Fohr card, world's leading
company, Fohr
influencer
card.
marketing platform. Some would say, I don't know.
I would add that for me, being an influencer is like running your own business, because it is, right? Your personal brand is your business, and like any business, you have to invest. And investing means time and money. If I was to start a shoe company, right, I would have to somehow procure money to make that first prototype. So if you're starting off and you're an amazing writer, but you're not getting any traffic, sometimes you have to invest some money to drive that initial spurt of traffic, right? If you, say, had one article that you just feel like this is the one, this is really good, start thinking about, you know, if I were a business, how do I get more people to see this article? How do I get more people to share it? How do I put it on Facebook? How do I even spend some money advertising to drive to that one article? And as you get more and more traffic, just like a business, as you grow, partnership opportunities will appear.
That's a really good tip. Invest in your business. Next question.
Hi, you guys have all built really amazing careers, and as someone who's a student still looking to break into an industry like this, I was wondering what sort of advice would you guys give yourself, you know, back when you guys were 20 years old?
As an influencer, are you an influencer or?
Looking to build a career in, you know, managing like marketing or data and maybe becoming a blogger. I'm not really sure yet. So like maybe what mistakes did you guys make when you guys were developing your careers, or
That's
what
a
sort
whole
of general
nother
advice?
Yeah, this is like a therapy couch. We could lay down here and really go to town on that.
I'd answer that. I think you should really dive into it. You know, if you want to learn social media, do social media. And my second tip is never be afraid to look stupid. Ask a lot of questions. Until today, I never pretend like I know. I'm always asking questions. So those are my 2 tips.
Enjoy your youth, it's fleeting. That's important. You just wake up and you're 33 and you can barely fit in your suit anymore. And you know, I mean, by the time you're 30 in 20 years or something, the world will be so different. You know, I mean, 10 years ago, none of this existed. Instagram is what, 6, 7 years old? And so I think, you know, just kind of staying on top of all, like there will be new platforms and new influencers, and this is again a conversation Becca and I had recently, is that like this stuff changed. Like there gets to a point where like nobody cares what 35-year-olds have to say anymore. Like you're just like, you're old, get away. Like, you know, and so like the younger people will, you know, a lot of this money will start to leave the established influencers and go to younger people, because like that's what the world does. It spits out the old. And so just staying on top of new things,
Morbid.
you know, staying on top of the new platforms. Like that's the thing, is like Instagram at one point was a new platform, and I was on Tumblr and I thought Instagram was such a joke. And like me and like
Yeah, me
and
too.
like the Tumblr bloggers,
I was
like
the
Jamie
Twitter
Beck,
girl.
like we used to sit around being like, this is stupid Instagram. Like, it was ridiculous. This is never gonna work. So
Yeah.
you know, proves my intelligence. But yeah, there'll be a new thing, and I think that like, you know, making sure that you're an expert in that, whatever that is super valuable, because we'll be like nearly dead by that time.
Okay, James. We're trying to keep it light here.
He's had a rough week, guys.
That's too funny. I didn't even
Any
know you were
other
33.
questions?
I thought you were like younger.
That's very kind of you.
Oh, all right, one more question.
Yeah, that would be the last question.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. I feel very inspired. But I also feel very old. Thank you. I'm only a couple years younger than you, but I feel super old because you keep saying you're gonna die soon. So I'm actually a mom, Instagrammer, YouTuber, blogger. It's tiring. And I wanted to ask, like, what do you guys think is the next big thing? Because we've already had Tumblr, we already had Facebook, and now Instagram, and there was Musical.ly. Was this question asked already? I'm sorry.
I think video. Video is the future.
But isn't that YouTube?
No, short form video.
Isn't that Vine?
Vine's gone. So I feel more authentic, content that is not so curated is key. People are so tired of overpost Instagram posts, I feel, and people just want to see more, non-filtered, edited posts, and video is where that is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm literally the worst person to ask about this. I have 100 followers. I'm the psychopath that bought something from Instagram. I have no idea.
I mean, the next thing doesn't exist. Snapchat tried, and they shit the bed.
Oh my goodness.
It didn't work. So it's gonna be. It'll be hard to kind of, dethrone Instagram. It will happen. I always think about like the Rolling Stones. Like the Rolling Stones were the Rolling Stones until they weren't one day, and it was
They
all
are
of a sudden
so
like
still the Rolling Stones.
they're still the Rolling Stones, and Instagram will probably.
Take the psychopath thing, but Rolling Stones, that's where I draw the line, man.
Well, I'm saying that like Instagram will continue to exist, but there will be a new thing, and there will be.
But Instagram has to evolve so much. I mean, from 7 years ago, it was just like photos, and now it's like more into this.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's less
stories.
so the company, right? Like Instagram, Facebook. I mean, Facebook now is doing a few things that Instagram had. It's really hard to answer the question of what's the next big thing, or else all of us here would probably leave this room and work on that next big thing and make billions. But I would say that the whole world, I'm going to be a little bit philosophical for a moment. From the dawn of time, right, from caveman drawings, you're communicating ideas to other people through some type of medium. It could be written books, essays, podcasts, videos, short-term video, long-form videos. So the type of content you're producing and then the medium upon which it's consumed, right? What's the difference between a television ad versus a YouTube ad? Same thing, it's just the different form factor. So I think the next big thing is probably the intersection of how you consume the content, whether it's virtual reality or natively integrated into your eyeball, right, as you walk around or something. And then also the type of content itself. And the type of content actually hasn't really changed much over thousands of years. It's always been text, voice, or video. The video could be better, shorter, longer, different forms. But at the end of the day, you're telling a story through some medium that people out there are consuming through some device. It used to be that the device is their eyeballs or their brain as they read. Now you have all these other things. But I still think, this maybe is the artist in me, like the very, very tiny one, that as long as you can tell the right story and you keep an eye, actually this goes back to her question, right? If you just keep an eye out for what is the next big technology or way to consume content and you're on top of it. There's a company in New York that made it big recently, Shutter, right? They're just news.
What's the name again?
Cheddar.
Oh, cheddar, okay.
I mean, maybe I'm messing up the pronunciation.
Like cheese.
Yeah. But
Cheddar.
Yeah. But they're news. I mean, they just have a couple millennials sitting on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange talking about news, just like Bloomberg did and C-SPAN did for years. But they just do it in a different way with more humor, more similarity with the generation, right? And they made it big. How is BuzzFeed different than the New York Times or Condé Nast? But still, they made it really big, so.
Journalistic integrity?
That might be it too, Fake news might be the next big thing.
All right, and I think we're out of time, so thank you so much, our panelists.